Yeah. Does somebody introduce? Is it okay? Right. I'm ready. Yeah, it's fine. So is it? I haven't got a clicker. I'm doing it on a. I'm just doing it on the laptop. Okay, no. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Right, I think we're good to go. Good evening, everyone. My name's Richard Green. I'm Chief Executive of the Design and Technology Association, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here to the Royal College of Art this evening for the first Design Futures lecture. This is going to be what we hope will be a series of lectures, one a term, which will be given by designers, engineers, manufacturers. And the intention is, what we want to try and do through this lecture series is to demonstrate the importance of design, engineering, manufacturing, not only to the country, to the economy, but also for young people's careers and the potential careers that exist in those sectors. Some of you will be aware, the teachers amongst you will be aware that design and technology at the moment is under pressure in schools. Some of the students might not be aware of that. But current government policy is tending to prioritise what might be seen as traditional academic subjects over those creative, technical subjects, such as design and technology. And therefore, in some schools, design and technology and other subjects similar to it are being pushed to the edges of the curriculum, if not off the curriculum. For example, this year, the number of students taking GCSE design and technology dropped by 10%. Which is a significant drop, and when you compare that with, and then you add that on to the continued drop that has been over the last 10 years, it just shows that the decline of the subject across the country. We want to try and rectify that, we want to try and address that, and we see this lecture series as being one way of doing that, of being able to get the message out to schools about the importance of design, about the importance of engineering. And we're doing that obviously through the lectures, you being here tonight, but for the first time we're streaming these lectures live, and afterwards they will also be available for download from our website. So we hope that the lectures not only affect students doing GCSE and A-level design and technology, and those considering whether they should do those subjects as options, but also to get the message out to teachers and senior managers in schools, and wider than schools, getting them out to parents and the wider community as well. Which brings us to tonight, which brings us to this evening, and we're delighted that the first lecture in this series is being given by Wayne Hemingway. Thank you, Wayne. You
don't need to do a big introduction, by the way, because I'm going to tell him all about it.
Yeah, I'm not going to, don't worry. I'm not going to. But it's certainly Wayne is one of the best known designers in the country, and I think what the presentation which you're going to see tonight, which takes you through from fashion through to multidisciplinary design, is an excellent example of why design is so important to individuals, to the country, and to the economy as a whole. So we look forward to hearing what you're going to say, Wayne, and welcome to the first Design and Technology Association Design Futures lecture.
Well, thanks for coming and thanks for inviting me. I don't often get the chance to speak to so many youngsters as there are here, so I'm going to tailor my talk to that because I've got 4 kids myself. Most of them are, you lot look about 17, around about 16, 17 or not? 15, so you're a bit younger than that. So I've got 4, well, they're still my kids, they're grown up though, 19 up to 30, so I'm fairly used to your age group and what you're going through. And one of the things I want to kind of keep coming back to here is you've got to make a difference, and one of the ways to society and to the next generation that come along. My generation, I'm not holding any responsibility for what I'm going to say now, but my generation is the first generation to leave you worse off than your parents. It's never happened before. Empirically proved now that you are the first generation that's finding it harder to get jobs, harder to buy a house, having kids, getting married later, having children later, all of those things. And it's a change in society, and there's only you can put it right, really, and that's how it works. And design and creativity can do that, and I'll explain a bit of that as I go along. So Hemingway Design. We're multidisciplinary designers. That means we design all sorts of things, from amusement parks to just on the right-hand side is student accommodation, to affordable housing, so social housing, which is the one in the middle, down to water butts in the shape of giant backsides. So, and we do events and all sorts of stuff. I think it's important to tell you how we got started. There is no one way to become a designer. The story that I'll quickly tell now is is one way. There are other ways. There are so many ways. And if we get a chance at the end, you know, feel free to ask questions about the kind of people. We employ a lot of young people from a bit older than you. We take apprentices on from 18. We also take qualified designers on from 21. And we also take people who've been through architecture degrees at 25, 26. So there's all different ways of doing it, and there's no one, none of them are the best. But so you've got to work out what works for you. And if you've got a creative mind, you've got to follow that, not follow what your parents say. I've always said to my kids, just get on with what you've got to. Trust your own views. If you wouldn't be here if you weren't reasonably intelligent. You'd probably be sat at home watching some crappy programme on television. You've got some gumption about you to actually come here, and I'm sure you haven't been brought in chains by your parents or by a teacher. So you know you've already got some intelligence. Use it. Don't just listen to what everybody else says. Follow your own mind. It's really important. At your age now, you're not stupid. You know you've got views, and Geraldine. A lot of what I talk about is going to talk about we, because it would never have happened without myself and Geraldine meeting. Geraldine left school at your age at 15. Back then you were allowed to leave school at 15. You didn't have to stay on and take your GCSEs or your A-levels. And she decided to leave. She left because her main love in life, and probably still is for both of us, well, her main love in life was making clothes, which she made for her sisters, and her friends, but mainly for herself, to go out and dance. Not many better things to do, is it, than go out and dance at 15? I mean, it's a shame now you have to have false ID to get into clubs, but that's I'm sure you can all be creative. We can be creative about that. We didn't need false ID. We were allowed in clubs at 15 back then. Age, it was never questioned. We never took drugs. We never drank. I've never taken a drug in my life. I'm totally teetotal. Geraldine's never taken drugs. She likes a glass of wine. But the main thing that we always did when we were young, and still today, because you can still dance when you're 55, still got legs. We met. So she left school at 15 to make clothes, mainly for herself, to go out dancing. Also, she wanted to earn money so that she could buy records. That's those plastic things that have come back into fashion, and to have the money to get into clubs and to go and watch bands. We met in a disco when we were 18 years old. There was this amazing-looking lass on the dance floor that I spotted. She had an amazing outfit on. I knew she hadn't bought it from the high street. She could only have made it herself, and she had knitting needles in her hair. I'd never seen a girl with knitting needles in her hair. No self-respecting, cool young lad would not want to dance with a lass with knitting needles in her hair. So I sidled up to her. We had a dance. I got a number, and within quite a short time, we decided we'd go and live in London, because we knew there was more clothes to buy, more records to buy, more bands to watch, more discos to go to in London than there were in our home area of Lancashire. And we'd no idea what we wanted to do with our lives. Absolutely no idea, other than to have fun. And if that fun gives you a kick, and it's harmless, which dancing and clubs are harmless if you're sensible, then we just followed our hearts. And our parents were great about it. They said, they trusted us and just said, get on with it. So we weren't married, this was in 1980, so it wasn't quite as free and easy then about living together without being engaged and without being married. It's all different now. My kids have all got partners. I've just become a granddad. I can't imagine any of them getting married. They're all in long-term relationships, and I think they'll stick with them the rest of their lives. But they won't get married. It's all changed. But probably that's a decision that you're making and your generation's making, and that's good. But anyway, the first thing I did when I got to London, which I would advise anybody to do, is to go into the Dublin Castle in Camden, get a post-it note out and stick up that you want to form a band. That's what I did. We'd arrived in London with £50 each in our pockets, that's all, which wasn't being absolutely broke back then, but it was enough. And we rented a flat, and the flat was only, wait for it, I think it was £10 or £12 a week. So we had enough money to last 2 months, because it was £10 or £12 a week for both of us. We had enough money to last for a couple of months without getting a job. I actually got a job, and then I went to study as well. But I got a job in a bar to start with. But the rest of the band, weren't we cool? What do you reckon? What does it? I'd like to know what a 15-year-old young lady thinks about that picture from 1980, from 36 years ago. Who thinks it looks really old-fashioned? Or who thinks it looks quite cool? Put your hand up if you think it looks quite cool. Make me day. Oh, you're not 15. That's cheating. So anyway, we joined, the rest of the band were on the dole. They were, I used to fund. You're late. Come on in. You've missed some really good bits. Get yourself settled down. Because I was the only one working, I used to fund the rehearsal studios for the band, and then they pay me back when they got the dole. And one particular week, it was like a perfect storm. None of them got their dole money. They'd all done something wrong. They hadn't turned up for jobs or whatever. And I'd taken the money out of the rent tin on the mantelpiece. And so I said to Geraldine, "I'm sorry, I've taken the rent money." And she went, "Oh my God, you know, we haven't got that much money anyway." So we decided that we would have to get some money from somewhere. And we read in Time Out that there was this new market starting, this new part of Camden. So we decided that we'd empty our wardrobe. So we emptied, Geraldine, we went down to the high street, bought 2 of those 50p, you know, those Chinese laundry bags. We filled one with Geraldine's clothes that she'd made herself, one with my old punk clothes and my old second-hand clothes. I'm still 100%, I always dress in second-hand clothes, but you can't tell really. And they don't smell, they get washed. We went down to Camden. The rent was £6. We took £100 and odd on that first day. We went out celebrating. Of course, we went out clubbing that night. Spent a bit of it on dancing. We decided that next morning we'd come back. We wanted the front stall the next morning because we knew we'd take more money. We queued up from 4:30 in the morning. Got the front stall, which we did every week after that. We took 300 quid. Our money went up to 300 quid for the weekend for a £12 rent, and there was I'll go back one actually. There was a spark there. You know, all we'd done there was use our nous. If you don't understand any language, I can ask me what nous means. It means use your brain to think. We needed money. It was a needs-must situation. We also knew that we had an ability, we must have had an innate ability to know about clothing. I knew that my second-hand clothing, I could sell it to somebody else. Geraldine knew that the clothing that she made for her sisters would also sell to other people. So, and you have a hunch, and we just followed it. We could have been, lots of people don't do that. They get frightened and they think, oh, what if I fail? My friends will laugh at me. I can't give a shit who laughs at me about anything. You have a go. You never care about, you should never care about failure. Failure is an amazing thing. As long as you're not hurting anybody during that failure. If during that failure you've borrowed a load of money and you're just being reckless and you can't pay it back, then that's not a good idea. But if it's just a fear of losing face, you all understand what losing face means. Why would you fear what your friends think about? I would fear, the biggest fear that I've got is not trying something and regretting it. Because you're 15 now, 15, 16. How old are you lot at the back that have just come in? So you're around the same age as these. So the biggest fear that you can have in life is to reach 30 or even 25, because life gets a little bit more complicated. Now life is really, you might think you have a lot of worries. You might think that life is complicated. It isn't complicated at 15, 16. It's a doddle compared to what it gets like later. But if you get to 25 to 30, there are more barriers in your way to trying things. And the sooner you try it, just try it when you're young. Please, please. If you take one thing from today, it's just have a go. Totally have a go. So we had a go. And it was great. And we decided that the following week we'd come back. Before we knew it, I just went round every single jumble sale, charity shop that I could find, buying second-hand clothes. Geraldine spent every spare minute she'd got making clothes behind her sewing machine at home. We'd take even more down to Camden the next week. We eventually got to £500 each in our pouches. Then we couldn't buy enough stuff, and my nan, my grandma, told me about these things called shoddy yards that she'd heard about, which were in shoddy and mungo yards, which were prototype recycling yards. I think it's where the word shoddy clothing comes from, which were like recycling yards. And we said we should go there and see where we can buy clothing. And we did. We found these amazing places. We were the first ones to ever visit these with an eye to buying second-hand clothes to sell on. And before we knew it, we were taking £1,000 each in our pouches. And every pair of Dr. Martens that we'd find from these places, even if, as long as they didn't have holes in them, we would sell for more than you'd buy for a new pair around the corner. So we were getting £30 for second-hand DMs that we were paying £1 for. And we couldn't get enough of those. And my granddad then reminded me about a pair of my DMs from when I'd been younger that he'd repaired in his shed with a soldering iron. They'd split across the bottom. And he'd repaired them with a soldering iron. They'd never split again. And he said, well, you want to find out if Dr. Martens get lots of worn returns. So we tracked down Dr. Martens to their factory at the time, which was in Wellingborough in Northamptonshire. Lo and behold, they had hundreds of what they called worn returns, split shoes. My granddad, we bought them all. We bought 600 pairs at 20p each because they were going to landfill. So, which was not a good thing. We were learning about sustainability at the time through these shoddy yards and recycling. It was all sinking in. We were learning about social justice because there was lots of poor people worked in these, and we were giving them shares of the money that we were selling stuff for on Camden, and we became heroes in those places because we were doubling the wages of these mainly very poor ladies who were working. Certainly at the time they didn't have, I don't think did they have a minimum wage back then. They would, but it was very low, and we were doubling their wages, and in return for that they were finding some absolute gems for us and stopping them going into become broken up into new material. So it was a win-win situation. And then my granddad, when we'd bought all of these Dr. Martens, he went to B&Q or whatever and bought 6 soldering irons, taught the band, who were still on the dole, how to fix Dr. Martens. And our kitchen used to just stink of burnt rubber. But we'd pay them £1 each. We'd buy the Dr. Martens for 20p, and we'd sell them at 30 quid. And it was just amazing. Before we knew it, we were taking £5,000 each on Camden. And at the age of, I think Geraldine was 19 and I was 20, so we'd been doing it a year and a half. We bought our first house for cash, a 3-bedroom Victorian house in northwest London. And we both were genuinely from working class backgrounds. I was a single parent family. My mum brought me up. Geraldine was one of 5 daughters, Mum and Dad are sadly dead now, but one of 5 daughters. They were brought up in a 2-up, 2-down workers' cottage in Padiham, a poor part of Burnley in Lancashire. 5 daughters, a 2-up, 2-down means 2 bedrooms. So you imagine what it's like to live 5 daughters all within 8 years, 9 years of each other, in age of 9 years of each other, living in, well, Mum and Dad in 1 bedroom, 4 daughters in another bedroom, and the eldest daughter always got to sleep downstairs on the sofa. So, so we'd gone from that, but it would never have happened if we'd have not been brave and not just had a go and had no inhibitions about it. These things happen. You've all heard of Paul Smith. Who thinks that he went to? Do you know anything about his background? Anybody? He was 17 years old, so a year older than you lot at the back. He wanted to be a pro cyclist and eventually do the Tour de France. He fell off his bike, quite a bad accident when he was 17 years old. He broke so many bones that it would have been, his recovery time would have been too long and too many years to ever really seriously become a professional cyclist. So he decided that he wanted to make pro cycling men's cycling wear, which he started to do, and then gradually that became a fashion brand, and we know Paul Smith. Vivienne Westwood, she was 18 years old when she was the manager of, most of you will have heard of the Sex Pistols, the band, one of the most famous bands that Britain's ever produced. She was married to the manager. She made the clothes for them. She probably is Britain's most celebrated fashion designer, and she didn't go through the route of leaving school at 18, going to college, but loads of great designers do. Loads of designers do go to college. Alexander McQueen went through the normal route. He was actually an intern at our place at Red or Dead. I'm not, I've mentioned 3 people who didn't go through the normal route, but for every 3 that did, there are 3 that go through the normal route. You've got to choose what you want to do, not your parents choose for you. And also not your I would actually say not your teachers choose for you as well. It's got to be you. It's got to be your heart in it. If your heart's in what you want to do, you've got a chance of succeeding. If you feel you're under duress from somebody else, I've very rarely seen anybody under duress ever do that well in what they want to do. I'm sorry if there's any parents in here who think I'm undermining them, but I'm here to give my experience, and that's my experience as an employer as well. Honestly, it is. So we, parallel to this, very close to here, just this building, Kensington Market, was less than half a mile as we're facing the park. It was half a mile down there. It's now bloody PC World. It was this. Is anybody here old enough to remember Kensington Market? Wasn't it amazing? Yeah. Wasn't it absolutely amazing? If your generation, we stripped this from you. You know, what we've allowed pension funds to do on our high streets, what we've allowed to happen to take this away. Kensington Market was an old subdivided, a large bank that had been subdivided into, large bank that had been subdivided into, that picture there is inside, so it was like a almost scary rabbit warren, looks like you could have a fire there and you'd never get out, and maybe that was the case. But it was subdivided up into small units, probably half the size of the stage here, which were mainly rented by people your age and a tad older. Geraldine took a stall in there. She took a sewing machine in there, and she'd sit in there making clothes. She made 8 items of clothing. It was kind of a vaguely Russian peasant collection. She didn't put a name in it. She didn't put any washing instructions. We didn't know all of that kind of stuff. We were still kids. Opposite her was somebody selling bootleg tapes of whichever band was in town, whether it was Joy Division or whoever was in town that night. There was somebody else starting up a fledgling hairdresser. There was somebody else starting up a tattoo parlour. There was somebody else selling second-hand shoes. But it was lots of young people who are having a go. It was £10 a week rent. You could trade in there 6 days a week. You could pull the shutters down at night, and it was amazing. You know, you didn't have to cart yourself out of a van or queue up in wet weather. It was all indoors, and people made scratched a living out of it. And it was a real community. Geraldine had been in there 3 weeks, and I got this phone call from a very excited girlfriend saying, we've just had our first wholesale order. Another shop wants to buy my stuff. And I said, that's amazing. You've only been going 3 weeks. And she said, yeah, but it's a massive order. I said, what do you mean it's massive? She said, well, they've ordered 200 of each of my 8 styles. And I said, that's 1,600 pieces. And on a quiet day, when you haven't got many customers, you can make 3. I said, how the hell are you going to deal with that? She said, well, I had to take the order because all the rest of the stall holders were saying it's an amazing company that's ordered it and I've got to take it. So I said, well, who is it? She said, well, I've never heard of him, but it's Macy's New York. Now, genuinely, we'd never heard of them. I'd travelled once in my life. I'd been to Benidorm, and she'd been to Torremolinos. We'd never had a holiday together. We'd never been able to afford it at this stage. You know, we'd been in London not very long. And because this was in parallel to Camden, this was happening all at the same time. So we got advised to go to this thing called the BKCEC, the British Knitwear Clothing and Export Council on Portland Place. We went down there, and I remember this export expert saying to us, wow, that's a great order. Who's your manufacturer? And I said, her. I think at this stage, then he said, that's the best order we've seen from London Fashion Week. And Geraldine said, what's London Fashion Week? We'd never heard of it. It was a much smaller event then, but it was taking place further down Kensington High Street, down at Olympia, and they must have wandered up the street into Kenny Market, saw Geraldine's stuff, placed this order. And he said, well, where are you from? I said, we're from Kensington Market. And he said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, we don't know. So what we did is we went outside, there was no mobile phones then, there's a phone box across by the BBC, went across there, phoned my mum, who was working, she was a barmaid in a scruffy pub between Blackburn and Preston. She didn't like her job, and she said, right, that's amazing. She'd heard of Macy's New York. She read magazines and was obviously older than us, because my mum, she would be. And she said, right, I'm going to pack in my job. I'm going to buy Exchange and Mart, which is kind of eBay to you young ones. It's the older ones are laughing at. And she found this nurse's uniform factory that was closing down in Blackburn in Rowley Mills. She rented the space, bought all the machinery from this closing down factory. Geraldine's sister, who was working at Riley's snooker tables in the accounts department in Accrington, she was a good little seamstress. She left. Another of her sisters went part-time. My mum found a load of other people through the Lancashire Evening Telegraph, and we set up a little factory. My mum left a job, ran the factory. Jerry and his dad did a bit of moonlighting from his truck driving and delivering the stuff, and we came up with this label, Red or Dead, and delivered the order. We made all sorts of mistakes on the way, and things went wrong like they would do. It'd make a great film, but we did it, and eventually Red or Dead grew to. So over the next 17 years, we opened 23 shops around the world. We did it all as well, without ever borrowing from a bank, without ever employing anybody with any qualifications. It was just people, just friends from clubs. It was an amazing atmosphere. It was just unbelievable. We ended up with 300 and odd employees. Imagine that, just short of 400 actually employees, including in all our shops. We had 23 shops from Tokyo. We just spent our life just going around the world to our shops and fashion shows. We won Designer of the Year for 3 years on a row, and we sold it in our 30s for. We were turning over 25 million, so you can imagine what we sold it for, an awful lot of money in our 30s, and went on to other things. But who in here? I'd just be interested to know who in here wants to have their own design business or label. Who would like to? So one there. Oh, quite a lot of you. That's good. Loads of you up at the back. Right. I'm just going to talk to you. I'll talk to all of you, obviously, but I'm not asking you to close your ears. But I'll just talk to you for a minute about the thing that, because all that sounds really easy, doesn't it? You know, I've just condensed 18 years or 17 and a half years into not very long at all, and it's not that easy to go from Kensington Market and Camden Market to 23 shops and Designer of the Year and all that lot. But there was, if I tell you one thing that we did that had the biggest impact, I mean, there's loads of things. Obviously, there are 100 stories I could tell, but this is probably the one story that had the biggest. Going the wrong way. That had the biggest impact. So concentrate on the right-hand side of that screen. So in the early to mid 80s the early years of Red or Dead, we decided we would do our first workwear stroke denim collection. So that was designed. I'd be interested to know what you think about that. Actually, what? Because it's mainly women in here. What do you think of that woman's outfit there? It was designed. We designed it in 1985, 4 or 5. What do you reckon? Feels up to date. Yeah, good. The key to any designer is to be able to look back on something and not feel shit about it, not feel embarrassed about it. And we've obviously, like all designers, you look back on things that you are embarrassed about, but this isn't one of them. So we designed that in 84, 85, I can't remember, but it was, we didn't know anything, no training. We wouldn't know anything about the history of workwear or the history of denim. But like everything, you can research, and especially now your generation, you've got research, in your pocket, haven't you, on your phone. So we researched, and we found that the history of workwear and denim was rooted in mainly American prisons, where it was made for prisoners to wear to do hard labour, and they had a whole system there of making clothes, and we came across this kind of political piece about how this kind of argument going on in the States at the time about whether it was good that prisoners made fashion of sorts or made clothing, or whether they should just be locked away and given nothing to do. And there was one side of the argument saying that, well, if you give people who cause problems or could cause problems things to do, it's like idle hands make what is it? The devil make work for idle hands. So if you there was people arguing if you give these idle hands things to do, they're more likely to learn a skill, to behave better, and we totally agree with that. Having young kids, and we knew from having kids that the second that your kids get bored is the time where you probably end up shouting at them more. Busy kids are good kids normally, and it's human beings actually. Productive, busy human beings are normally better human beings. So we decided, well, maybe we should do our first denim collection in the UK. Could we find a prison? And we did find one. We found one prison called Full Sutton Prison in York, which is one of the prisons where people go if they've done something very bad. So a lot of lifers go there. And they made some great samples, and then halfway through the process, there was this new fabric came to the fore that was a denim that was made, or a workwear that was made from hemp. And we got this rep came to us, and I thought, we're making denim, which is kind of jeans are one of the icons of rebellious culture, James Dean and all that, always with the white T-shirt and the jeans. Therefore, we thought, and hemp, that could get some publicity because, you probably know another use of a different kind of hemp is cannabis. So we said, first of all, well, this is good, but we must make sure first, because of all the issues, that we got all the scientific tests done to make sure that you couldn't smoke this fabric that came on a roll. And lo and behold, you couldn't. It was completely different. If you did smoke it, it set it on fire. It would set on fire, and it had no qualities that would make you high. It would actually burn you rather than make you high. So we'd solved that one. So we sent it to the prison to make the clothes, and the collection was made. And then one day we were doorstopped by a load of tabloid press, and they basically laid into us saying, again, it's quite a long story, but I'll cut it short, saying that we were supplying cannabis on the roll to Full Sutton Prison under the guise of making clothes. And it was a lot kind of worse than that. And, at first you get, that feeling of absolute fear. That's when you do have fear, because you think, oh my God, have we got it totally wrong? But we go back to the first thing you do is you go back to the science, just check it's all done right. We check, we send it for a second opinion. Very quickly you can get all this stuff done. There's no way we then realised it was a total and utter fabrication. Spoke to the prison that just burst out laughing. In the meantime, we're published on the front page of the if your parents read the Daily Mail, please work very, very hard to stop them doing it, because it hasn't improved an awful lot since they did this to us back in the day. So the headlines were, fashions you wouldn't be seen red or dead in, the sick face of British fashion, all of that kind of stuff. But luckily, the Guardian, I knew somebody at the Guardian and said to them what had happened. They thought it was funny as well. Would I write an article? We had the proof that the tabloids had been absolutely stupid. Wrote the article. Not by today's standards, it didn't go viral because there wasn't the internet for it to go viral. But it did get talked about an awful lot, and our name just went like that. And from then on, we knew to be political. We knew to be socially questioning, because this was about, suddenly by being political, so we got our following just grew. With so many people wanted to be part of this design name that was socially aware and wasn't just about what black is the new brown, darling. We knew from then on that to stay political. The name was political, red or dead. We were political people anyway. We have got strong views. That's the background we're from. And we knew then, and we kept doing it. We would do things for Greenpeace. Every single season we would have. When we did London Fashion Week, there would be something really political about what we did, and we'd do messaging. And our name, as a result of that, just went like that. That became our USP. And so anybody who's and it was that, I think it was that more than our. You've obviously got to have designability, but I think it was our marketability that allowed us to grow at such a pace. And with the name and with what we stood for and all of that, we then realised that we had to have. We came up with a philosophy about two things. That design is about improving things that matter in life. We said we weren't just going to be about pretty frocks and nice shirts. And this was because this was about what things that matter in life, and everything we did had to matter. And then we also said we were going to be the world's first affordable designer label, and that gave us a mission. So if we knew what we stood for from this point, we absolutely knew what we stood for, and everything became easy. Then we weren't thinking about, what should we do? Should we do florals or should we do stripes? It just became no. What is our message this season? And it all just flew. Just fell into place from there, and for the rest of our careers it's been like that. The older people here will know that I'm known for being outspoken, for having political views, for talking about diversity and sustainability and all of that. But it all stemmed from knowing at a pretty young age that we wanted to be like that. There might be different things that you want to concentrate on. You might want to concentrate, like the brilliant Safia Mini did with People Tree, on making sure that the clothing were made in villages in Bangladesh or wherever, but those villages improved, their lives improved as a result of her working there. There's all sorts of ways you can do it. And she's got a career for the rest of her life now because of that. And, you know, she started in the body shop. There's all sorts of ways of doing it. Right. So after selling Red or Dead, we went on to become multidisciplinary designers. So the last 20 minutes, 22 minutes, I'll talk about this. The first thing that we did was housing, and I just want to explain how we kind of fell into doing housing. I was passing this housing development, and at one end of it, it had all of these signs up saying Barrett's last few for sale, Barrett's Homes, for first-time buyers, from £180,000, whatever. But I looked at it, and it was really upsetting me. I kept thinking it could look like something else. So, could it look like something else to anybody in here? Just shout out if you think it looks like something else. So you've heard that it came. Now, can people who thought it looked like a prison put their hand up? So, are any of you, keep your hand up if you are architects, if you are planners, or urban designers? And if any of those, can you just put your hand up if you're an urban designer, planner? So there are 2 or 3 of you in here who are that. So this was delivered by planners. They allowed it to happen. There must have been some form of architect on that. I mean, what kind of bloody architect it was, I don't know. But there was some form of architect involved in it to make it stand up and be engineered. But I had no qualifications either, and like the rest of you, I thought it looked like a prison. So I went on to, I took a picture of it. I was on a train journey next, and I messed around with Photoshop and did that, and then took it back to the office. And we got back to the office, and the rest of the team, we're all laughing about it. But then there was a 23-year-old young lady who'd been through our apprentice system who never hardly said anything. She was just very quiet, a good little designer, but a good young designer, but very quiet. She said, "It's not funny." So we all looked, oh, she's spoken in a meeting. What's going on here? She said, "It's not funny." And I don't want to live in a flat like that. But my generation's not getting anything else. Why are they building? Why is your generation building stuff like this? And anyway, we probably can't afford it anyway. And then she shut up. And somebody just started clapping. And then another person started clapping in the big team. And they said, "Well said." And then they said, "Come on, let's do something about it. We need to do something about this." So we all sat round and we said, right, so I've done something for a laugh. How we're going to turn that into, we're supposed to be about, design is about improving things that matter in life. None of us have ever designed any housing. What can we do? We said, well, we can't just go and design housing because you've got to buy land. And we said, but let's be provocative. So we decided we would send this picture to the local paper in Swindon, the local radio station, the head of planning, all the planning committee and the mayor. And we sent it with an explanation. And a few days later, I ended up on the front of the Swindon Advertiser, and it says, "Wayne Hemingway says that all new housing in Swindon looks like a prison," which I hadn't said, but typical of a local paper. But then I was invited onto this phone-in show, knowing I was going to get absolutely pulled, because you do if you go into a local place and you've criticised it. So I went on there. People were phoning in saying, how dare you criticise our town? Everybody criticises our town. And there was a call for me to be banned from Swindon. And there was a vote. And I was promptly banned from Swindon, which is great. So we thought, well, we must be onto something here. And we started to take pictures. Because when there's this much heat in a subject, you've got to mine it. You've got to think, well, are you totally wrong? And we knew we weren't. And we found different examples of this, and I got banned from Hull, and then Scunthorpe. And then what happened was, the word got out, and I got asked to write an article for The Independent. I wrote about this article about the wimpification and the Barrettification of Britain, which became like a catchword. I was then invited on to Newsnight, where in a debate with the house builders, Jeremy Paxman, who was the presenter back then, sided with me. But 2 days later, got a phone call from the secretary of the CEO, the chairman of Wimpy Homes, as they were called then, who said that his daughters had said we should... They'd always followed Red or Dead and our political views, and they agreed with us that we would never live in they would never live in a house that their dad built, and that he should come and talk to us, which he did. And he came to us and he said, would you be interested? I trust my daughter's taste. I've looked at what you do. You've been successful in all the things you've done. Would you be interested in designing some... Have you ever designed any houses? No. Well, we actually had designed our own home, but we'd never designed any mass houses. He said, would you be interested in designing a few houses for Wimpy? And Geraldine said, yeah. So I said, but we've got no experience. He said, well, would you come and look at this site? So he took us to this site in Gateshead. And it was, they'd owned it for 12 years and not been able to do anything with it. They couldn't make it stack up financially. He said, well, would the kind of people who you appeal to live here? I said, yeah. I said, it's scruffy, but people, a certain generation will take a place like this and turn it into a great place to live. He said, would you help us do that? I said, yeah. He said, well, how many houses would fit on this? He said, 760, 780 on the site. And I thought he wanted us to design... like a few prototypes. I said, well, how many do you want us to design? He said, what about all of it? What did Geraldine say? Yes. Absolutely. I just looked at her and thought, oh my God. You've just, So we went aside, we talked about it, we came back to him and said, we need 6 months. We need 6 months to gather like minds of people who've got experience, because we couldn't do it, there's no way we could do it on our own. Fashion you can. Architects, buildings need engineering. You've got to know how, you've got to know all the calculations. But we gathered a team. We assembled an amazing team, including a like-minded couple of architects from this company called Jane and Mark Massey from IDP Partnership in Newcastle. We got a whole set of people together. Me and Geraldine took a sabbatical for 6 months. We took our kids out of school. We got a camper van. We toured everywhere from South Africa to Australia. Most of our learnings were learnt in Northern Europe and Scandinavia about great housing. We took pictures. We read. We researched, we came back, we said Wimpy gave us this 6 month sabbatical because they'd had this site empty for 12 years. And we came back and in the meantime, we started to take all sorts of pictures. So we'd take pictures like that and think, who here thinks that's a good idea, or who thinks it's a bad idea? That of course it's absolutely thick. But that again has been put up by people in councils. I know why that one was put up, and it's pathetic why it was put up, but again, if we've got time and questions, you can ask me the story about that. But we went out and we did that. We started to do, being provocative. That's what the job of it. If design can be, and creativity can be really provocative, it can change the world. You talked about there's been a 10% decrease. Why the hell is that? I know why the hell. It was because Michael Gove made absolutely terrible decisions. I'm glad he's no longer. Is it? No. Well, he is. Is he still a politician? He is still there, isn't he? He's in charge of bloody the Brexit, isn't he? My God, what a man, eh? Well, not a man, but he's not the kind of man. He's not what I would call a man, anyway. So he. Not only was he partly responsible, and this is on camera, and you can leave it on camera. You don't need to edit it at all. Not only did he contribute to this 10% decline, but he also is also massively contributed to an appalling thing called Brexit. And we still haven't righted. This government still hasn't understood this. The creative industry financially is the second biggest driver of the economy now. It's the fastest growing in terms of exports, but more than that, what it does about improving quality of life is unbelievable. And so it isn't, if any of you were thinking you were going to come and hear about, well, this is how you do dresses and this is how you design houses, that's the easy bit. That is the absolute easy bit. It's the political side behind and what it can do for society, what design can do for society, as well as employment, as well as wealth creation, which are all important in life, obviously. But what it can do for the good of society is absolutely amazing, and more about that now. So, designers see that is absolutely daft. Designers see that makes absolute human social sense. Designers see the funny side in 5 blooming springy chickens and how useless that is as a play area that will stimulate young kids. You know, parents see that, don't they? Designers and any self-respecting parent and any self-respecting 15-year-old understands that their younger brothers and younger sisters, well, let's have a vote. Would your younger brothers or younger sisters, well, you're young enough to remember what it was like to be 8 or 9. Would you have more fun on that playground there, which I took that picture I took in Germany, or that playground? So let's have a vote for chickens. Let's have a vote for free play. Yeah, it's pretty obvious. But we took a picture of this and took it to, I'll never forget, a meeting at Gateshead Council with the planners. And we showed them the kind of, because they used to do quite a lot of springy chicken type play areas. And we said, we're not, on this housing development, we're not going to do these kind of Wicksteed springy chicken things. We want to do a what we called free range kids playground. So, you know, where kids can learn to balance, and if they fall off, they might strain their ankle, but they'll learn to balance better next time, and that'll help them with their sport and everything, and you know, all of those kind of things. And we want to do a playground where kids can dig in the sand. And he said, well, you can't. We love your ideas about free-range kids, but you can't do a play area with sand on the ground. And I thought it was about dogs and cats coming to do their stuff in it. So I said, well, put a fence around to stop the dogs and cats. I said, well, you'll have to do that anyway to stop animals going in it. But it's not about that. It's about... I said, well, what is it about? He said, well, it's about babies could crawl around in the sand and eat it. And I just said, well, that's no problem. We can replace it. It's $1.99 a bag at D&T. And then Geraldine went on her iPhone and typed in, child eats sand and dies. And you know, you can't find that. You can file child eats sand and has bad shits, but you won't. But that is what being a designer is. You know, it's about seeing something and seeing that something is wrong. And after that, the design of the play area becomes easy. When you've changed hearts and minds, when you've shown that there is another way, the design of that, and then the design of the housing is absolutely easy. And again, more about that in a minute. So this was the land that we took. It was the first home zone, new build home zone in the UK, which means that cars are reduced to a very slow speed. So cars had to negotiate round table tennis tables and seats in the street. This street was built in 2000. I mean, it looks very contemporary, but this was the first street, and it was lived in from 2003. So it's, you know, it's a decade and a half ago now, and it still looks great. If you go back to visit it in Gateshead, it looks better now. All the trees have matured. We built communal. This is another development we did in Dartford. We built communal barbecues all throughout Gateshead, the development, and Dartford. But this was we were almost stopped from doing this. I remember the council telling us that if we couldn't build barbecues because people had hoodlums would come onto the estate and barbecue your neighbour's cat. You know, that's another statement that, you know, you have to. So what do? You think, oh, we can't do a barbecue because a hoodlum will come on the estate and barbecue the neighbour's cat, or do you just think, well, that's absolute. Some people just have stupid ideas, and therefore our job is to debunk those ideas. And you can't really find many examples of hoodlums barbecuing cats, and it's not a regular thing that the police have to deal with, really, or cats have to deal with either. So in the end, when the Arts Council wanted to find out how come these two fashion designers had built this housing development has been a roaring success from day one for everybody involved, financially for Wimpy, speed of sale for the people that live there. We absolutely, when we go back there, this means more to us than anything else we've done in our career. I don't think we'll ever beat. This is the highlight of our career. We know we've improved a lot of lives through it. We know we've created somewhere that in 100 years will even be more amazing, because it's maturing in the way that Victorian streets, you know, mature in London. And it's just, there's a real community there who've opened their own shop, their own cafe, who have created their own dog walking clubs and sports clubs, all off their own back. It's amazing. But when the Arts Council wanted to find out, and it's won awards all around the world. In the first year, it won National Housing Development of the Year, which we couldn't believe, you know, we'd done that straight away. But the Arts Council wanted to find out how come these fashion designers had achieved this, and the public said, it was about the generosity, and they called it, and about all the barbecues and how that made them feel, the people who lived there feel special. And they called it, and hardly anybody talked about the architecture. I mean, the architecture's fine. It's nothing special. You know, it's not Brave New World, but it's the small things, you know, and for us that kind of proved our philosophy about design. It's those small things about it rather than the big statements that people notice. Has anybody here, I'm talking about, not talking to you 15-year-olds now, has anybody here ever bought a house because they love the architecture, but it's in a place they don't like? So you've lived in, and did you move from that place?
No.
You still live in a place you don't like?
No, the place attracted more people like me, so
Eventually.
So we grew with it.
You grew with the place, but most people will choose to. But you chose the place. I'm sorry as well. You did. You knew that had ability to grow. You were just an early adopter to it.
Yeah.
But very
I
few.
could see the beauty when it was still covered
Yeah.
in shit and
Yeah.
needles.
But very few. But would you know, if there was an amazing house that was in a place that had nothing going for it, no access to parks, no access to a town that you wanted to shop in, you wouldn't live there. And we had to. It's all about place, and we had to explain that, and we had to go through that battle with Wimpy, who said we sell houses, and we said but people don't buy houses, and that whole battle, people buy places, and they only buy houses when they're desperate, you know, in a place that they don't like, and so that's the battle we won. Right, I'm coming to a conclusion now. Your generation. Around and your older siblings, your older brothers and sisters, are doing amazing things. I started off this talk talking about how my generation have created. For you at the back, we started off this talk about how my generation has left your generation to be the first generation worse off than its parents in terms of career chances, money earned, well, disposable income, and the chance to own your own property, or even rent your own property affordably at the moment. It's got that bad. And you have to make the difference. You don't wait for governments. You just don't wait. You know, you wait for a government, and then you find a man who's a career politician, says, I'm going to be around for the rest of my life, steps down from being an MP yesterday, you know, Cameron, you know. So if you wait for politicians or you wait for people to run your lives for you, you'll get nowhere. You get out and do it. Some of your European contemporaries are doing amazing jobs. Look up Copenhagen baths. Look at the story of how there are 8 of these now in Copenhagen. You know, an idea by young people for young, ostensibly, well, an idea for young people, but it's for everybody. Of really almost like homemade floating baths that they float into the canals in Copenhagen, where you swim at your own risk in canal water that's not been cleaned, and where most of the time there are no lifeguards to stop you doing it. In the 8 years it's been up there, one person has died. In Britain, number one, we wouldn't have done it in Britain, and as soon as somebody died, we'd have shut the whole lot of them down. But you know, this is the kind of thinking that you have to change the culture. Germany is an amazing country at the moment, and there are lots of young, you know, people a little bit older than you choosing to go and study in Berlin, and you know, I think that's a very, very good choice at the moment. Actually, a fantastic choice. I know that won't please everybody in the room, but my youngest daughter went abroad to study. I think my youngest lad's just gone to Bristol, but I don't think he'll last long. I think he's drawn by. He spent last year abroad. He's come back. I think he wants to be abroad again. There's some great things happening abroad. We've either got to bring these ideas back here or go and enjoy them over there. That's my opinion at the moment. But your job is really to bring them back. You've probably heard that. Well, in my county, Lancashire, there are 36 libraries almost certainly closing. Libraries are closing because, you know, lots of people read their books and things on their PDAs now, and that's the way that life's gone. And also, council cuts of keeping them open. You know, councils are strapped for cash. And the Germans have got a great idea. They've opened 6 of these so far. This is one in Magdeburg. Forget about the architecture. Look through it. It's a library that is open 24 hours, 7 days a week, with no doors and no staff. All done completely on trust. Could we do that in this country? Why couldn't we? Are we worse as a society than Germans? I don't want to think that. I mean, lots of people are saying yes, and lots of people, when I say this in a talk, will say yes, we have got ourselves into a worse situation than Germany in terms of trust. But if we don't reverse that, and you only reverse it by being brave and generous and trying that, your generation's got to do that. You know about trust. You know, everything that you're doing on social media is an amazing thing. That you are more social. You know, you are more. Don't listen to old people who say, "Oh, they're on the phones all the time on Facebook, faceache." You know, you are more. I know from my kids that you've got more. You have more of a social life than we did. You know, you're just because you're not face to face with somebody doesn't mean that you're not interacting with them. You know, so you know you can make the world. You now can make the world a better place and a more social place. I won't talk about that one. Who's been through St Pancras? What's one of the... Who remember... I've done this the wrong way around, but do you when I think of St Pancras, yes, it's a beautiful architectural renovation of an amazing set of buildings, but one of the things that I always think about is people sat playing pianos. It's one of the most beautiful places in London. And again, what is it? Free pianos in a public space that people... This is the future of... This is the future of society. And you know, you've got this sharing society. You've got to take it forward. I'm not going to... I was going to talk about... I'm going to finish now because I know that... I'm not going to talk about this project. In the questions, if you want to ask me about some of our braver projects, this is one that we did, some seaside regeneration, but I'm going to go past that. Travel. Get yourselves abroad. Go and visit Berlin. Go and visit the Mitte district. This is the Mitte district is, and the new area. It's kind of becoming a little bit gentrified now, and there's new versions of it, and it's spreading out. The Mitte district, for a school trip, don't go skiing this year. Don't take them skiing. Take them to the Mitte district in Berlin. You know, when the Berlin Wall came down 26 years ago, or whatever it was, the West German government, as was, looked across to East Germany and saw this. A whole part of East Berlin that had been very poor, that had not been as prosperous after the war because it had stayed with the eastern side of Europe, and with a lot of young people who looked. Some did take drugs, but looked probably more druggy than they actually were, and a lot of them were just artists, and they lived like this in squats and opening cafes. A lot of the young West German youth gelled with this with the former East Berliners, and they came over and they came through the wall and they all got together, and the West German government basically didn't know what to do, so they left this area around, and now they call it, officially it's called an absence of government. So they left the Mitte district as what's called an absence of government, and they let it develop, and my God, as it developed into the most youthful, exciting, cheap place to start. It reminds me of London when me and Jerry, going back to those stories I told you at the beginning. This is the closest that Europe's got to Camden as it was in 1979 and 1980. And how are you going to create that? You have to get back. You have to get away. Lots of you, I can tell by the way that you're dressed. You're very lucky, you lot. You're middle class kids, and that's no criticism at all. You should thank your parents for doing well in life. Well, as long as they've not been. Some of them might have been kind of inherited money, but whatever. You're lucky. You're lucky, and if you know, but you have to spread that luck. You have to spread that luck now, or else we'll have more issues like we've just had with Brexit. You know, make no mistake. You know, there are people in here. There are diverse skins in here. I genuinely believe it was not a vote against. It was less of a vote against immigration, and more of a vote against a lack of people feeling that they've been left behind by people. You know, my kids have been very lucky. We've been able to help them. Bank of Mum and Dad have helped them to get on the housing ladder. and that means that they'll be able to help their kids get on the housing ladder. And it's a massive advantage in life, and lots of you here will have that. But lots of people who you go to school with won't have that, and they'll get left behind. If we have that two-tier society, things won't get better. But you can change all that, and they've started. The Germans are doing it way better than us. If you look at the gap between the haves and the have-nots in this country, it is way wider than it is in Germany. And so if you go to places like this, you'll see how to do it. And the gap in 1980 when me and Geraldine got together. We felt, from a working class background, there was no barriers in our way. It just felt like the world, because life had always got better for each generation. We were part of this new generation with no fear. It was a rite of passage that we were going to own a house, that we were going to maybe the first to go into further education, which I eventually became the first one in my family to go to university, which I did while we were doing the early days of Red or Dead. It felt like if we went to London, the streets would be paved with gold and we wouldn't have to live in a squat, and that there was a chance, because there was nothing suppressing us. Now you imagine now being in a, if I know that if we lived in Blackburn and Burnley now and we were 18-year-olds from the background that we were from, we would not have had that boldness, that confidence. It would have been knocked out of us. It's a different world. And we might well have voted Brexit. We might well have done it. Because what else was there to do? And so you've got to change that. You've got to change that nihilism. And creativity can do an awful lot for that. It's happening on a bit of a posher scale. If you can persuade your parents to go to New York and stay in Brooklyn, or stay in the newer areas of Brooklyn. Williamsburg is kind of becoming a little bit posh now, but the outlying areas from Williamsburg, go and stay there. See what your generation it's creating a new New York, a much more exciting New York, a New York to fall in love again with. But it's your older brothers and sisters generation that are doing it. Go to Liverpool. Go and study in Liverpool. See what young people are doing in the Baltic Quarter there. It's amazing. Liverpool is an amazing city to go to at the moment and be young. I'm not going to go on about London. Go to Margate. Go and see what young people are doing in Margate. We did a great project there called Dreamland. And if you do become creative, involve the back. Look, we had no training in design, me and Geraldine. Our parents, from the background we're from, and well, actually, from my generation, the idea that you would go to school and you could become a designer just wasn't on. It was probably even worse. There may have been less chance to be a designer well, obviously there was less jobs in design back then than there is today, but yet we did it because inside all of us we're all creative. We're all actually born creative. It's absolutely part of us all. Some of us can. It's how you develop that creativity and how other people help you develop it, but mainly how you help yourself. But we just did an amazing project. How many people have used a tube? If next time, who's noticed this uniform? So I don't care if people notice it or not, because the good thing is that sometimes design isn't noticed. But basically, over the last year, their old uniform, which was just basically a horrible, not a very nice uniform at all, has been replaced by this uniform. But they've designed it. We helped them do it. It's called co-design, and all the way through we sketch things in real time on the internet, and they fed back. And 16,000 there's 20,000 staff wearing this, and 16,000 of them made comments. And as a result of that, they felt so engaged that when they got to know us all, both physically and through the internet, from seeing all the design team. When we go through the stations, they know us, they talk to us, they love us really, and because they know that they created these garments with a little bit of help from us, And that engagement about bringing people along is what design can do, and you can design a new society, basically. So thanks for listening. I've gone on a little bit long, but we've got time for questions. First hand up back there.
Do you think that globalisation and the internet has made it easier or harder for designers because people can get products cheaper and mass produced?
I think globalisation and the internet is a very positive thing for any business to start up in. But it's quite hard to. Obviously, things like Facebook and Amazon have all developed their businesses just online, but it's quite hard to do that. I think we do a lot of events, so we have these things, a classic car boot sale and Urban Village Fete, and all that. We have an events department, and all of that is done and marketed online. But when it comes to being a designer, I think you learn more from face-to-face contact. So, for example, me and Jodie regularly talk about this. If now we were starting out and our first shop on Neal Street was £60 a week, our first proper Red or Dead shop. That shop now, we checked it out recently, is £4,800 a week, and it's owned by a pension fund. We rented it from an old chap who we just paid him £60 a week. So we could, but what we learnt in that shop was when somebody comes in and they don't buy something, women are really good and very good. They're very polite, and they would always say, "Oh, I'll think about it. I'm going to another street, and I'm coming back, and I'll think about it." But you can tell, you learn by looking at the whites of their eyes whether they're just being nice or whether you've designed something that is just a pile of rubbish, because everybody's saying the same thing. Now on the internet, you don't learn that because people. You don't see that. You're not seeing the person. Human beings are really good at judging body language. We're good at judging people. Not all the time, but most of the time. You can't judge somebody down. We know that. You can't judge somebody down at the other side of a keyboard. And so getting in front of people is really important. And that's the problem we've got at the moment, in that, our high streets are owned mainly by pension funds. And so yes, the internet. To answer your question, the internet's fantastic, but it's very hard just on its own to do well with that. I wouldn't like to start a business just on the internet.
Is there a project you would really, really like to do?
I wouldn't mind. There's still a lot of. I'd like to have a look at London housing, but it's just we've never done any housing in real London. We've done outer boroughs of London. We've never really had a go at. We've done PRS private rental sector housing but that was only taking existing buildings. That was taking the Olympic Village. I'd like to take really scruffy land that was along the edge of a railway, and for it not to go to one of these Berkeley Homes type, where there's shareholder value at the end of it, and it's all about maximising return rather than maximising community benefit. But unfortunately, this is London, and that I can't see it coming actually in my lifetime. But I do think that at the moment there's too much emphasis on money coming back, short-term money coming back for the public purse, rather than long-term benefit for society, and it's happening. We've just been involved in there's a project that we wanted like no other project. It was this amazing location in the centre of Leicester, called Leicester Waterside, and we put an amazing. I know it's one of the best pieces of design we've ever done. That's probably it was the first thing that I've thought recently that this could trump the Staiths into the Gateshead development. We might be able to notch it up another level, and when you bid for these jobs, you bid with a consortium of developers, house builders, and a design team. And this was an amazing design team and a developer, social housing developer, based in Liverpool, who has a proper social head-on, benefits for society. And we just got the result a few days ago that we lost the bid. We won it hands down on design. We got the highest mark you can get on design, and the people who won it fared badly on design, but they offered more money for the site. We know, I'm not going to name names, but the people who've won it, I've never seen a decent development that they've ever done. So we know that amazing site in the city centre of Leicester has got a very good chance of ending up being a pile of shit. And in the long term, that the cost of regeneration and the cost to society and the cost to the city, which they're not taking into account, they're taking about getting money in now to repair potholes or to repair a hole in the budget caused by an unscrupulous government. We should always be thinking long term. And design can create long-term value, but unfortunately not enough people value that. Yeah. Oh, they have done. They have done. They've done. We've done a few with them, and they've, you know, whenever they get the chance to not going to do it, they're going to not do it, because it's harder to do that. It doesn't necessarily. You can make the same money by working a lot less, and when there's a housing shortage, and their job, Wimpy will always argue, and that their job is to the shareholders, and it's hard to argue with that, because they borrow money from shareholders who want a return, and it's often pension funds, so it's you lot in here, some of your money will be in the house builders, and you want a maximum return, so that when you retire, when you wherever it is, 60, 65, you can go on your cruises and all of that kind of stuff. That's what we're like. But the money gets invested, and the job of these businesses, a FTSE 100 company, is to maximise your return. But the job of planning and government is to be a counter to that, to make sure that isn't just about the people with pension funds, it's about the people who are going to live in those places and future generations, and that's where we're falling down at the moment. So I blame the house builders less than a planning system which ultimately is government-led. And it's not just this government, it's the previous Labour government were not amazing either. So I'm not a raving Corbynite. It's government after government that's been doing this, and we need a complete fresh thinking, some complete fresh thinking. Could be the Green Party. Might be. It was in Germany. We've changed a lot. Yeah.
Is there a design challenge that you would say no to?
Oh, loads. We say no all the time. So an example would be, rich people come to us. They don't understand what we're about. Oh, I've seen that bloke on telly, on the telly, and they say, would you design a one-off house for us? Well, no. If you split your land in half and give half to affordable housing, yes, but no, we're not. Go and get Kevin MacLeod to go and do that for you. Although, to be fair, that's not fair on Kevin, actually. Kevin, that's not fair on you, because you've done some really good social housing. Right, in Swindon. Did you just? Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Which would you find is more important, recreational ground or housing?
So just say that again. Recreation or?
Housing.
Well, I think obviously the house is very important. It's got to work. It's got to be cost effective to run. It's got to not cost you too much in terms of your bills. It's got to feel lovely when you're inside it. You've got to be able to adapt it, and as you have more kids, change it around and all of that. But when you step outside as well, that should feel part of your home. When you come in, when you start to arrive back into the development, your spirit should be lifted by greenery and by seeing people smiling with their dogs, taking their dogs for a walk, and thinking, oh, I want to get out on my bike and all of that lot. So the two go hand in hand. They're equal, really. We're nearly there. Right. Thanks for listening.
Just a few thank yous at the end. First of all, thank you to Wayne for delivering a really passionate lecture. I think the one thing that, well, a lot came through for me, but I mean, I think the one thing that came through it was the power of design to change society, and the power that design can give young people to change society and the society that you want to live in. So I think as a message, that's a fantastic message to take away. The only other thing to say is these lectures, we've had the support of the Royal Commission for the exhibition of 1851 and the Happold Foundation, so we thank them because their support has allowed these to take place. The second thing to say is look on the website, on the Design and Technology Association website for tonight's lecture, if you want to use that again, if you want to have another
Bleep out the swear words.
Yeah. We'll censor it.
In case they're young.
No, we won't. We'll leave them in.
Will the full slides be there so that we could go through the slides at our own pace, so
Yes.
separately to just...
Yeah, because he doesn't need as much without the slides, does it?
Yeah.
I've seen it put up before, and I'm referring to slides and nobody can see them. So
Yeah.
you will put the slides
Or
up.
The
if
slides
we
will
could
be there.
access
Yeah.
the slides separately so that we could take our own time to go through them and stop at some noisy
No, the slides will be part of the video, so no, it won't be a separate PowerPoint, although if Wayne, if you're happy for the PowerPoint to be made available separately, we could do that.
It's difficult because then they can get, I'm kind of making it, pictures could be used and some of them, it's better if you grab it, you can do that yourself, you can grab it from the video, just get a program, grab it from the video and do your own. It's better than me giving it to you, to tell you the truth. Safer. Because photographers have got copyrights on, like TFL have got copyright on it, but I'm alright showing it internally here and on our website, and if you grab it, that's fine.
That's right. And the final thing to say is to keep watching the website for the second of these lectures, which we're intending will be in January. So watch the website for details of when that will take place. Thank you very much for coming. Have a safe journey home.